So this is Linda of Christ is King Forever. So my two teachers of the Orthodox 101 stood up in front of our church and explained when their first time was at that particular church and why they knew it was the right church. So I've been kind of like beating around the bush about how I became an Orthodox person. I think it's because, or at least a believer in the Orthodox church, it was because it's a little, well, unorthodox. Okay, so I was hanging with the ortho bros, which everybody gives a bad rep to, and they were hanging out in spaces and being kind of, I think the word is confrontational with the Jewish people. Now I didn't like that so much, but I liked being able to be there to show a contrast, to say, hey, these guys are very aggressive, which I don't appreciate, but for some reason it's a man thing. They like being aggressive. But sometimes they were having open dialogue and conversations, but I've seen a few times where I thought, okay, well, that's a little harsh, because when you start trying to push the Trinity on people who don't understand, like, it's a complex thing. Well, anyway, so I would co-host and make sure that I was trying to be the person who was the soft edges, because that's the role of being a woman of a group of dudes. Like, it was all dudes. Dudes love theology. Women don't seem to be so interested in it. We did get a few women who would come in. I don't do it as much now. These spaces, but I do participate in the debates or conversations in the back rooms, because they have these channels that have 200 people and people jump in and talk about theological stuff. I dig that a lot. Anyway, one of my friends on there said, I'm going to the local Orthodox church this weekend. And I thought, you know what, I'll go too. Well, it was early on a Sunday morning. Now, the Catholic Church, you can go at like 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 5 o'clock. You have all day that you can get up and go to the Catholic Church. The Orthodox Church only has one time. And I was woken up, I believe, by the Holy Spirit. And it was really early. It was like 6 in the morning, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And the Holy Spirit's like, "Well, you're already up. You should go to the local Orthodox church." I didn't even know what to look up. I had no idea. So I just put an Orthodox church. The first one popped up, happened to be Greek. I think it's the only one in my area. I have no idea. Well, anyway, I went, and when I got there were these guys who I think are called papuls. I don't know but they're elders, and they have special names that are different than the Catholic Church. But they were all in black, and they're off to the corner. And there were some helpers that were new to the church who I think came from Catholicism, like myself. I know all the people in my little pocket of the church that were all from the Catholic Church. For some reason, we kind of know each other, all of us who went from Catholic to Orthodox. Well, anyway, they were new and they had a badge, like a little name tag, and they're very welcoming, kind. I lit a candle. The bells started ringing, like the bells, and it's so pretty. Like, they have really beautiful bells. I don't know if they're real. They almost sound digital because they're so beautiful. I was like, "What's going on? Why is everybody all dressed up? What's happening?" Like, it's always, people are always dressed up at church, but I knew from all the elders gathered in a corner, dressed to their best, and they're kind of running out and panicking back and forth from outside to inside, that a big thing was happening. It turned out His Grace, okay, he's a bishop, and his name is His Grace, His Righteousness, Savastiano. I didn't realize it then, but hearing those bells is extremely rare. I've been attending ever since this date, the 2nd of February, and I have never heard the bells play like that before. I don't know where they were coming from. I don't know how there's a switch, or if they're literal bells or what, but it was so pretty. It was almost like wind chimes, almost. Also, placed above is a thank you letter sent from His Grace to the church, and we got it in our newsletter, basically thanking us for the visit. I was not a part of that because I was very new, so just to show the date and the fact that this is when the event happened, and to have it in writing is kind of cool, so I figured I'd share it, and that's why I kept the letter. He was being crowned that day because I guess the other uh, Grace Bishop person, I don't really know how they refer to them because I'm new. He, I guess, passed away, because I guess a lot of them are older. He was being crowned as the new Bishop, Grace person, to oversee this church. I think this is how it works. And he has a bishop's chair, and there was a crown that was brought in a little hat container. It was like a hat carry bag. It came in first. Then he came in, but it took a long time. With the bells are ringing, people running in and out, and he was dressed up. He had this tall black hat. He kind of looks like the classic depiction of high priests or rabbis. He looked like a rabbi, right? Now I've never seen this before. I'm used to like the white tall hats, and so I thought, whoa, I am within the first 30 minutes because I was there kind of early. I was there at 8:30. I'm in the presence of a guy who's about to be crowned in this church. Like I know what's happening here. I didn't have any clue what was going on, and the lady who was I guess a welcome person, welcoming everybody, said he's being crowned today. And so I thought, oh, this is so cool. I get to watch one of the rarest ceremonies on the first day that I entered the Orthodox Church. I thought this is the coolest thing. The ceremony was really pretty. There were special garments that he wore, and he had the crown on his head, and he sat in the bishop's chair, and it was amazing. It was very cool. It was very long. So for my first time, I thought, whoa, this is serious because it's a very long service. Um, but that was my first Orthodox experience, and I loved the chanting. The chanting is what convinced me this is what's going on. Like I had to be there. I felt a detoxifying effect where I felt like there was something happening. Like I was a tea bag being steeped, and everything that was negative in me was steeping out of my body. I just love the chanting. And now it's so automatic and necessary. It's like drinking water. If I miss a week, I can feel the difference. I do think there's something very special about the chanting. Um, Also, I love the imagery in the church, the icons. I think this is what they're called, right? Icons. I'm showing them here because there's a glorification. It's very rare that you, in the church itself, that you see anything negative like the death of Jesus. It mostly looks like a glorification of him and Mary and the saints, and I think that's an awesome thing. There was a welcoming feeling among the people there. Like I got to know within my first 2 weeks several different ex-Roman Catholics or people who were going back and forth. I don't know what they're doing, but they were from the Catholic Church, and we were trying to sort out, well, are we allowed to receive the Eucharist or not, type of stuff. And we don't know if that's what it's been called, right? So we're sitting there trying to figure this out. And until this day, I do feel maybe more comfortable in the Catholic Church only because I understand the routine, whereas I'm still trying to get into the rhythm of hearing the sayings. Especially there's a confession that's a really long piece of paper. That one is hard for me because for some reason, as I'm reading it, there's a rhythm that I can't really catch. So as I'm trying to say it, it doesn't really come out right, right? So the same thing with the Apostles' Creed. I know the Apostles' Creed by heart. I don't know if it's a Nicene Creed or I don't understand the difference really. I know one says the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father. That's the difference. But there's words like they change out the word world with ages. So there's a lot more ages type of vocabulary than there is worlds. Um, there's also an extended version of the creed that's not quite the same for the Catholic Church as it is the Orthodox. So there's certain rhythms that I'm just not catching quite yet, but I know eventually I will. And I think the priest being married is helpful because what they say is really applicable to what's actually happening in your life if you're married or have children, or because they're going through that type of grind too. So there's a reading of pulling in Holy Spirit inspired information, biblical information that threads a little bit more cleanly and more precisely than if somebody is kind of isolated and kept away from the everyday life, looking at social media regularly or looking at your TV and seeing the real things that are happening in the world. There's just a good and clear message from people who happen to be priests and married. I think there's something very healthy about that, in my opinion. I've not seen anything I don't agree with, and if I did, I wouldn't say anything honestly because it's not for me to decide. What I'm saying is there is a type of perfect alignment with the way the tradition and the ritual is that has shocked me because the Holy Spirit's like showing me the background behind it. and saying, this is cueing the truth. This is the truth. And sometimes people do rituals and they don't know why they do it, but the Holy Spirit's like, you don't have to have anybody tell you. Like, this is, it's like archetypes. You know, when you're reading the story of Little Red Riding Hood or some type of fairy tale or something like this, you understand who the wise old man is. You understand what the Holy Grail means and what it's referring to when it's talking of this and what the symbolism is behind it. It's just innate. When you look at the sun, it means wisdom, light, nurture, it's warmth. There's something about the traditions and rituals that I know came from a place and were kept very precisely and accurately from maybe Polycarp or St. John. I don't know where they came from. The Holy Spirit's confirming it's just riddled with the truth. Now, I personally believe the Greek Orthodox Church, which is probably all the Orthodox churches, I don't know the difference honestly, is the church, in my opinion. And there would be very few things I could find after seeing the Trinity teaching me something because it taught me. You know, like seeing how the Trinity worked and realizing, oh yeah, the Bible confirms that. I don't think the churches should combine. I don't think they're akin enough. They're akin enough where you could say Roman Catholics are like a cousin to, but they're not so close that they could be combined again. And I do think there's a danger to that, in my opinion. Okay, I know I probably shouldn't say that, but there's some talk on X about the churches coming back together, and because of the Pope at the top, I don't think that's possible. Well, anyway, uh, I love the Greek Orthodox Church, and if you have one near you, I would go visit it. Again, I don't see anything that I would ever publicly complain about. I don't really even do that about the Catholic Church, to be honest. There's just differences that I saw it in the Catholic Church that was off, but I didn't know, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the Orthodox Church came in and said, this is the correct position. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. You know, that's the way it's looking. It's not like I have enough information or knowledge to really say what the difference is. It's just I'm seeing the clicking into place that makes sense biblically, but again, I have no authority, so that's just my opinion. So I pray that anybody listening, that the Holy Spirit guide you with the right decision on what church to attend, and that you should be fellowshipping with the saints. You shouldn't forsake that, according to Apostle Paul. But also remember that we are to worship God in truth and in spirit. So as long as you're having some type of fellowship, like let's say it's the last days and there's no churches available, you would probably have to have something like a house church like they do in China. So if it's strange enough where you are, you can't find an Orthodox church, and you can't afford to go too far into town or out of town for such things, there are ways to watch it online. So just kind of look up Greek Orthodox Church, and you can find it anywhere on YouTube until you're able to attend and kind of experience it for yourself. That would be the next best thing. But other than that, I really hope that God is with you and that you're blessed.